Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm Lori Marino, and I'm the president of the Whale Sanctuary Project. And today, Charles and I want to give you an update on our project, where we are, where we're going, and what it takes to do this. And I want to begin with a very short video, which is narrated by Charles on the water, so that you can see our stunning, beautiful sanctuary site.
So now we're moving along the net line. Of course, if I look inside all along this area, that's the extent of our sanctuary. So if I'm a whale, this is the area that I have to swim. This is the area that I have to dive. I can chase birds out here. I can go to the bottom and see what crustaceans are on the bottom. And we're looking back at Bearishwa Island. So you see, we're not to the northern edge of our sanctuary at all, but you can see the distance that this is. You get it again as I pan around to the north along the shoreline. You're getting a sense of what this will look like. And now we're following the net right toward Rocky Point. So this gives you a real good sense of the expanse of this sanctuary from this outermost corner. So there you can see the buildings that we left on the wharf. They give you a sense of where the innermost part of our sanctuary will be. And if we look right there, that's where the buildings will be, right by that stand of trees that you're seeing right in the center of the frame. That's really where we expect to have our infrastructure buildings. We'll have our veterinary area, the medical facilities, we'll have our animal care staff, we'll have all our administrative work, and certainly our net locker, our net loft, and also all the marine operations facilities will be right there. But now you can really see us coming up on Rocky Point and why they call it Rocky Point. As we head back to the wharf, looking back at Rocky Point, again on the shore, and pretty close to shore, you can still see what a big area this is. And now we're coming right into the wharf itself, which will be our base of operations. But before we do, I just want to head back around where our buildings will be. So there's that stand of trees I spoke about, and that's where our buildings are planned to be built. So we'll have probably three main buildings, one for the medical and veterinary side, one for our marine operations, and then we'll of course have administration, research, and our net finance. You get a really good view of the wharf, which is what makes this such a wonderful site, because this infrastructure already exists. We don't need to build a new wharf. We're just repairs. And whether these buildings will be buildings we'll use or not, those are decisions to be made in the future. But we're coming right into the cove, and this is Bearishwa Cove we're coming into. And it's very shallow. This is not an area that would be suitable for the whales. Our net would come across really over here on the island. Our net would come right across here and attach to the wharf. And that's what we're coming back into.
Okay, so after you've seen that, I'm going to turn things over to Charles, and then he's going to turn things back over to me.
Thanks, Lori. So we wanted to give you a sense of where are we in the process. So this is a slide that really just takes you through a number of the activities that are necessary in creating a whale sanctuary, not just here in Nova Scotia, but really anywhere. So hold on, wrong thing. See if this will work. Yeah. So obviously you do a whole lot of work with the permitting and government agencies. What we've been involved in really for the last 18 months is environmental research on the site, not only for permitting, but also for understanding where the nets will be placed, understanding all the geotechnical features of the marine environment. As Lori pointed out, or is pointed out in the film, it's 100 acres of water space for the whales, but it's 205 acres of leased water area, because you have to have room for all the anchors. You have to have room for a barrier area outside of the net that is a no-go zone for boats and people. And you have to really look at all aspects of that environment, both on land. We have 30 acres of land under option for all of our buildings and our infrastructure, and the 205 acres of water space. All of that has to be looked at. Now, the environment was a gold mining area in the 1880s to the 1930s. So you have to look at all the heavy metals that could be residing in the area. All of that work has already been done. So that's the kind of work it takes. But to give you an example of the timing, we applied in April of 2022 to take 18 core samples, a core sample roughly the size of a water bottle, in the marine environment. We received the permit to take those 18 core samples 4 weeks ago, because it had to go through consultation at government, had to go through First Nation consultation, and the like. So we're doing that work next Monday and Tuesday, applied April of 2022. Now, COVID got in the way, things got in the way, but come on, isn't that long? It's crazy, but it's true. Simultaneous, sorry, wrong button. I'll get better at this sooner or later. No, it won't switch. There we go, sorry. So simultaneously, the designers are working on those buildings that'll go on site back over in this area behind where we're talking here. The designers are working on the buildings, animal care, veterinary care, marine operations, boat operations, net cleaning, all of that is a part of that work. The end of 2022, we received a $5 million grant commitment from the Wendy P. McCaw Foundation. Think back to the Keiko days. The McCaw family was instrumentally involved in that. That $5 million commitment is tremendous. Now we need to match that. But that gives us a leg up in terms of quantity of funding that's critical at this point in time. Similarly, the land purchase, I mentioned we have 30 acres of land. The funds for that are in escrow. They're just waiting until the permits are done, then we take the land. So all of that has been negotiated, it's done. And again, not unlike out here in the West, First Nation consultation is a critical part of the process. So all of that is going on continuously, but progressively. And a feature of that that is nonstop from the first day we entered Nova Scotia until today is getting together with the communities. So we have a visitor center that we've opened. It's manned every day, womaned actually every day. And the educational programs, it's a community gathering place now. It's a place where the community comes together to learn about what we're doing and to engage in whales. If you wander around the town of Sherbrooke, you see signs on people's lawns, belugas belong here. And those have been all over the community. That's the support that's critical for this to go on. Back to Laura.
Okay, well, thank you, Charles. Also wanted to talk about a few things that are new. First of all, this kind of work is so heavy duty that at some point you have to start increasing your capacity, and we've done that recently. And this is, I guess the title isn't up there, but
This is Alexandra.
Alexandra Vance. And she's our new project manager in Sherbrooke. And she's a Canadian resident. She's graduated with a Master of Marine Management from Dalhousie University. She's an experienced marine research expedition coordinator, a primary responder for marine animals, and a lead biologist for the only marine protected area in the southern Gulf of St. Lawrence. So we're really lucky to have welcomed her on board recently, and she's there in Sherbrooke in Nova Scotia, and she's working with us to take care of a lot of the stuff that needs to be done locally. So, welcome, Alexandra. And then I want to tell you about something that is very, very important that we did recently. For 2 years, we were working with the National Aquarium in Baltimore and Merlin and Sea Life Trust to create accreditation guidelines for sanctuaries for cetaceans, because there were none before that. And there's lots of places that call themselves sanctuaries that are not. And there's lots of people that put up a website and say, well, we're going to do a sanctuary, et cetera, et cetera. But we realized that we needed professional accreditation guidelines for cetacean sanctuaries. So we worked together and did that through the Global Federation for Animal Sanctuaries. And we created new standards that define 3 important aspects of an authentic sanctuary for cetaceans. One is it's a place that approximates a natural cetacean habitat to the fullest extent possible in a large coastal area. Second, that the principles are very simple. The welfare of cetaceans are the priority. No one else comes before the well-being of the residents of the sanctuary. And practices. We will provide human care, feeding, veterinary checkups and treatment, all the stuff that the marine park industry provides, but so much more. We will do that in a natural setting. So sanctuaries actually represent the best of both worlds for captive cetaceans who cannot leave the tanks and just go back into the ocean. There'll be no breeding, no performances, and no direct visitor contact. And if you want to take a look at the standards, that's the link there, and it's the first time that there ever have been standards. And that's a really important step that we've taken in terms of the cetacean sanctuary movement. And we also, as we have been doing for so long, always working on identifying and trying to find a way to connect to places that have candidate whales. Currently, some of those candidate whales are these. There are 2 beluga whales in South Korea, and the people there are looking for a place to send them, a sanctuary. And Charles and I have been in Zoom meetings with them for a very long time, and we continue to see if that's a possibility. They're 2 young females, Bella and Luby. There are 4 orcas at Marineland and Antibes, as you know, this family who's been through so much. There's Shemenk, who's all alone in Mundo Marino, Argentina. There's Naya, who now is in the Musberry in Russia and is all alone after her 2 other whale friends passed away. And there are at least 30 belugas at Marineland, Canada, and we continue to reach out to them in every way we can to find a way to dialogue with them about bringing their animals to sanctuary. There you go.
Before I go on, I want to mention a couple of things about this. I mean, this goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago with respect to how do you actually bring whales to a sanctuary. And so with the National Aquarium in Baltimore, they have their own dolphins, and they've made the commitment to create a sanctuary. For the belugas in Kletzvik Bay with Sea Life Trust, they were animals that they actually brought from a facility they bought in China. A difference with the Whale Sanctuary Project is we're looking to create a home for whales we don't have. So with each of these cases, and every one of them is individual with very different circumstances, it's again about creating the relationship with these entities to see whether it's possible for them to join with us in some fashion for those animals to come to sanctuary. So in each one of these cases, and they're in all different healths, the stories of late about Shamank are devastating as to what we're hearing. But what's the truth? Can someone help? Those are the things we have to be able to get on site to understand. And so all of that is ahead of us. Then also, and I think some of the slides are missing, but part of this is Whale Aid. We created a program in 2019 called Whale Aid with help from certainly One Voice France, from help from others, to do the work and get the team together that was so eloquently talked about by Oksana and Ingrid in terms of Whale Aid Russia. So that was the first Whale Aid project. And why would we do Whale Aid at all? Because it's about having the capacity to do more. Why is Alexandra now part of the team? Because we got to build our capacity so that I can spend time with Toki, so that we can do other things that are important to do. So you build the organization that way. All of the funding we receive for any of the projects that we do as through Whale Aid comes from a different source, a restricted source of funding than the general donations for the whale sanctuary. So all of it has to be accounted for correctly and the like. And that's part of what we do. So Whale Aid Russia, you've heard about more than we need to talk about again, but we were able to house that work in the Whale Sanctuary Project in order to enable it to go forward, both financially and otherwise, with specialized grants, particularly in this case from the Manitou Fund and from One Voice France as well. So that was tremendously helpful to do. Initially with Toki. The Friends of Toki organization was not initially was even formed when we started the work. So we needed to find a way to get started. So the funding from Pritam Singh, the first $1 million, was donated to the Whale Sanctuary Project, a restricted fund to work for Toki. And that's how we were able to keep that going until we were able to incorporate Friends of Toki, Friends of Lolita, create its 501c3 status, nonprofit status, and set it free to work on its own. So that's kind of the Whale Aid picture within the Whale Aid Sanctuary Project so that we can continue to do that kind of work. And then you want to talk about that.
So I put this slide in here. We're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Blackfish. And, you know, everybody wants to know, what have we accomplished as a community? And what do we need to still do? Well, of course, there's a lot more that we need to do. But I thought I would just sort of give you an idea of some of the things that have changed since Blackfish. So we can all leave here after 2 days of being very confident that we're winning against the captivity industry. Okay, so first, cetacean sanctuaries are in development or exist. That didn't exist when Blackfish came out. Accreditation did not exist. The largest whale rescue in the world happened, and that's the Russian whale jail. The Tokate rescue, another that you know about. Canada banning cetacean captivity. I was so honored to be very involved with that, as many of my colleagues have been. And the Jane Goodall Act is coming in, and the Jane Goodall Institution has chosen the Whale Sanctuary Project as a focal project. And we are working to get that done, not just for cetaceans, but for other captive mammals and others in Canada. And we also have the SWIMS Act, which is making its rounds. We're far from the point where we could say what's going to happen with that. And Naomi and AWI have been very involved with that. But all these things have happened or are happening and will continue to happen as we move forward as a community. So, into the future, and thank you.
We have a few minutes for questions if there are any.
Hard to see.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit more about where we're at in the process of selecting a C10 site, the Toki, and what may be the major criteria involved in the decision, and then even the timing of it, back now that Toki may be released in the not too distant future?
So the question is, can I talk a little bit more about site selection for where Toki might go, how that's going, where it would be, what the timing would be, and the like? What I can say, and I'll tell you why I'm not going to say a lot. What I can say is that the identification of sites that are suitable for her in terms of the size of the area, in terms of other impacts on the environment, other stakeholder interests in the sites is all ongoing and quite advanced. The reason I don't want to go further than that is because from a cultural standpoint, those discussions should take place first with the tribes. And that's what's happening now. So I really don't want to take it further, even though, certainly there's a lot more known. Because I think, and Howie just said it beautifully, showed it beautifully, this is a lot about reuniting Toki with her indigenous family as well as her whale family. And therefore having the respect to do this culturally correctly is important. And so we really want to follow that process in the way we are. Yes, ma'am.
This may be a silly question, but
There are no silly questions.
we obviously know that whales and dolphins that are born in captivity are not suitable to be released, obviously. And in the event of a large sanctuary like yours, presumably there will be male and female whales and dolphins intermingling. And what happens then?
Yeah, so one of the tenets of an authentic sanctuary for any animal is no breeding, no reproduction, because nobody wants to make more captive animals. And sanctuaries are captivity. And we don't know what the composition of the group of residents will be. And so there are chemical means of birth control. There may be some behavioral management mixed in there as well, but basically there is a way to prevent reproduction. And we will have a full service veterinary facility and staff who will tell us how to do that safely and effectively.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like a follow-up question in regards to the site selection for Toki. I know that, like you said, you can't say specifically where she is, but I just want to put it out there that it's definitely not in Puget Sound. I know that probably the area that you're looking at is Salmon Islands, but from a contaminant standpoint, please don't put her in Puget Sound.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
It was more of a statement than a question. It was a request that her site not be in Puget Sound for concern about pathogen transfer, which we talked a bit about earlier. So it was a request that we not consider Puget Sound for contaminants. For contaminants for her or for both?
No,
For her, right. Yes. And so all of that as well has to be looked at. And anything she can be exposed to has to be looked at as well for her. And the water quality standards in the sites have to be evaluated. all of that is part and parcel of site selection, as it was for the Whale Sanctuary project as well. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm from Ohio. We don't, this is from my in-law, it's kind of hard to, visit work everywhere. But I've been to a couple protests with Toki, one in, Miami, one in Pittsburgh, at a Palace Entertainment, or park, when they still owned this aquarium. What else can, this Ohio group be doing for Toki, other than, screaming at my friends that they're texting all the time, or, boring them to death with orca stuff?
So the question is, what can I, as a person in Ohio or anywhere else, be doing for Toki today? And I think there are a number of things. First of all, we live in a social media world, and you can find anything you want on any subject on social media, but certainly on this one, you can find a lot. And so what I would urge is trying to be in touch with as much information as possible and communicate that information, as well as continuing to be cheerleaders for Toki, because Toki needs all of our cheers. It's going to take all of us to get this moved forward in the ways that are appropriate. It's also talking to people who are in either elected positions or others to make sure they're aware of this situation. Your Ohio representatives will also be involved. We have people now working with all of the congressional offices so that they're aware of this and can carry the message effectively. So we're structured in Friends of Toki with government relations people, public relations people, and the like. Now, why has it been so quiet for so long? Because the license for the Miami Seaquarium that Howie spoke to, no longer including Toki or Lee, has a stipulation that any visuals of Toki are exhibition and therefore violate their license. So it's taken a while to work through the legal aspects of whether, if we show pictures, as I just did, are violating that prescription on the Miami Seaquarium, but because we're not them, it's not. But that's pretty complicated stuff. And so we had to work through all of that before we could be as public as you're seeing us in the last couple of weeks. And we're now positioned to be able to share more information, so you'll have more information to share with your friends and colleagues.
I just wanted to add to that. If you want to know about Toki, go to Friends of Toki. If you want to know about the Whale Sanctuary Project, go to the Whale Sanctuary Project. Social media puts out a lot of stuff. But if you want to know about what we're doing, come to us. There's never been a case where, I will answer emails, get on Zoom, talk to people on the phone, whatever is necessary if you're interested or have a question. So just come to us and we're happy to chat. Here's this up there.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know that the sanctuary site is really, really impressively large. I was just wondering, since there aren't any individual animals that have been arranged for or selected to be moved to the sanctuary, what is like a realistic capacity for the site? And can you, because of the social dynamics of species, what are any concerns you have about dumping animals that have been in different captivity situations all together in the same sea pen and then intermingling? How many animals do you expect to be able to provide for?
So a number of questions all rolled into one. So first, about the size of the Whale Sanctuary Project, we mentioned 100 acres. So what's our capacity, if you will, for how many animals could be in there? So the way you look at that is by looking at the capacity factor of the environment. So it would be different for 100 acres in our Nova Scotia site than it might be 100 acres somewhere else. All depends on the hydrodynamics of the area, how it flushes. All of those are part of site considerations. What we've identified with this particular site is roughly, if it were belugas, roughly 8-9 belugas would be appropriate in that 100 acres. If you had different species, obviously they would have to be segmented into other areas. So one of the values of having something that's 100 acres, it can be and should be segmented, particularly when they first arrive. You don't bring a beluga or two together and put them in 100 acres on day one. The design of the facility is such that you have to be able to do that in smaller spaces and introduce them to the larger spaces over time in a way that's appropriate for them. So your question is right on. It's exactly what, I mean, it implies the answer, if you will, that you have to look at this, again, as individuals, where they're coming from, not introduce them to stress because of either the size or what they're being exposed to, and do it in as gradual and stress-free way as possible. And the design of the facility has to allow for that. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes, you.
Okay, I have actually two questions. My first one is, when will Toki be introduced to live Chinook? And my second question is, if you guys don't have an agreement with anybody yet to move a cetacean into the whale sanctuary project, will you continue to work on infrastructure and putting it together? So when they agree, it will be ready for them.
All right, so two questions, one with respect to the whale sanctuary project, one with respect to Toki. Take the second one first, which was really about, without having agreements for whales or through all the process and the permits and the like, will you continue to work to get it ready? And the answer is, of course, yes. You have to have a facility. You got to be able to say yes in order for an agreement to be made. It's a chicken and egg situation. You want to be talking with people about the whales, but if you don't have a place for them to come, you can't sign on the dotted line. You have to do both. So yes, and you have to keep working. You have to have it open, and you may not have a resident on the day you're finished, but you still have to be ready. So that's why you have to have all the money. You have to do all that work. The question with respect to Toki was what? I'm sorry, one more.
When will Toki be introduced to live Chinook?
When will Toki be introduced to live Chinook? Well, that's a tough question. It's when we can and how it would be done. It would, first of all, it's live fish. I mean, keep in mind that for 53 years, she has been fed frozen fish. Initially, if Keiko has any experience, she won't know that a live fish is food. The first time we did that with Keiko, and for a while, he would bring back a live fish and give it back to you because it was basically, he thought it was a game. He didn't think that was food. And why would he have to chase food? I mean, that's not normal for his life. So again, one wants to do that in a very careful way under the direction of Jeff Foster to make sure that we're doing it in ways Jeff has done this before, as others of our trainers have, to introduce it. But again, it will not be the case that she will be eating live fish as 100% of her diet ever. In an environment such as an enclosure, she couldn't possibly catch enough fish to feed her with what she requires a day. So this is the terrible dilemma of being in the sanctuary world work is, as Lori said, it's still captivity. The animals require our daily care. The commitment is to care for them for life the moment you take the first one. That's why the Jim Irsays of the world, as well as all of us, the individual contributions are incredible and necessary. But it does take the Jim Irsays, the Craig McCaws, others of the world, because these are hugely expensive endeavors. And you need those partners as well, because the commitment, again, on day one is life. And if you can't do that, you shouldn't take them. Yes, ma'am.
The money. So all the rights to these stories are going to have a lot of potential to bring in a lot of money. Will that go to the orcas? Or the dolphins or the cetaceans?
You mean if there are films and the like made, that like?
Yeah.
I mean, so the questions come up, okay, if there are rights to any of the intellectual rights, if you will, books, what have you, film, for these animals, will any of the profit for that go to the animals? The answer is, of course, they should. Those are the commitments you make when you write the deals, and you make sure that as that happens. I think as so many of the people in this room who have done films would say, unfortunately, the films we do don't make a lot of money. I mean, the documentaries don't. The features maybe, but you know, there's just not a lot of profit in this work.
It's coming back out.
Free Willy's coming back. Okay. And so, yes, I mean, you need to make those kinds of deals. It is, you know, you have to do everything for the animals. There's no one in this room has ever made any profit doing this work. And I don't think they ever will. It's really about making sure you get the work done right. And if there's any stray money around, make sure it goes back. So I think your point is
I
right.
like deals with Hollywood. And,
Yeah, if there can
I like
be,
Hollywood.
if there, and if deals like that can be made, certainly the beneficiaries should always be the whales. Yes, over here. Yes, you, I'm sorry.
I was wondering, have there been any successful whale sanctuaries that you took inspiration from, or is this kind of the first of its kind for the project?
Well, you know, so many of us realize that sanctuaries are necessary in order to move animals into a better situation who are currently living in concrete tanks. Is the next step in this movement, and finally to have a world where we don't have wild animals in captivity in zoos and marine parks for our entertainment. But that will come later. Right now, we need to model a new way of relating to them. So currently, there is a sanctuary site put together by Sea Life Trust and Merlin Entertainments in Kletzvik Bay, and they have 2 beluga whales who have been in the bay and have come out in the bay. And what they're finding is it's hard to build, you know, a cetacean sanctuary. There are technical issues that have to be solved, but they're getting there. And they will be the first ones to have a legitimate cetacean sanctuary in the world. Now, the National Aquarium is still working on their site. It's many years. They expect this to take many years. We expect this to take many years, although when we started out, we didn't expect to take this long. But it does. It just does. It's that kind of a project. And there are a number of other efforts out there. Like there are some folks in Italy who are interested in creating a sanctuary for dolphins, and others around the world. And what we want to do with our work is help them realize that, because we need lots and lots of cetacean sanctuaries.
We'll do one more question, but before we do, where does the inspiration come from? If Lori were to go back, and she tells the story so often about, 2015, when some of it meetings that came out of here in some respects.
Yeah, I'll just say the inspiration comes from the animals, right? And just having worked in the captivity industry, doing research, realizing what these animals go through, and realizing, you know what? I'm tired of just talking about it. Let's do this. Let's make a sanctuary. And I remember being at a conference and going up to Don Bauer, who is our late
Very great.
counsel.
Great.
The late, great Don Bauer, and I went out into the lobby and I said, Don, we're just going to do this. And he looked at me, and we are doing it. So the inspiration just comes from the animals and from the people who I was lucky enough to work with on this project, like Charles.
And all of you. Last question, please, Marielle.
This is not a question, Charles. This is a testimony, because the first time I was in Superpod was in 2018. And your presentation about the whale jail in Russia really moved me, and it was the most beautiful and strongest presentation from my point of view. And today, these whales, they are swimming free. And so what you're doing with the whale sanctuary is giving us the strength because we cannot work daily without hope. And without what you're doing, there is no hope. And so, I mean, thank you so much. Whoever, when I say who, I'm talking about the whales, whoever you take, it doesn't matter because it will be happiness for these whales and for everybody who loves them so much and live for them. So thank you for what you do and don't listen to the criticism because, you know, greatness is always followed by not greatness. I'm sorry for my English. So thank you, and I wish we could all applaud them because it's so hard to be doing such a complex project with everybody looking at them, and you know, and you're so great.
Thank you. Yeah. And while we're talking about our team, we've got two key members of our team, actually three, Maggie, Katie, and Jeff in the back, who really have been with us every step of the way. I mean, Jeff and I go back to Keiko. We've got Naomi somewhere over here going back to Keiko. I mean, all of this is what it takes. So thank you all.